Okay, so when we look at this last problem, we have a log function and an exponential function. Charlie, your phone should be away now. All right, so it asks where the two functions equal each other. What do we have to do with our calculator to figure that out? We have to plug them in. And then what are we looking for on the calculator? Where they cross. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let me get my window back to normal. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start typing the first one. So I've got a negative. And then how do I get the log on my calculator screen? Math up, up. Okay, so log base 2 of x plus 5. And then a minus 1 on the end. So there's my first equation. My second equation is 3 to the x minus 4. And then a minus 5 on the end. Then we hit graph. All right, so second trace is what brings me to the menu, and which one am I using? Intercept. Yeah, option number 5. And I don't have to move the cursor at all because these only cross at one part, and so I just press enter, 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 and it will get me right there. Okay, and they're telling us to write our answer as xy. What does that mean? How do I write my answer?
Just bracket or the squiggle bracket. No, just bracket.
Not brackets. Well, look at what it says on the paper. What does it mean when it says that on the paper? Write your answer. Yeah, write it like a point. It's a point. It's the point where they cross. Write your answer like a point. So the x coordinate is 3.856. And the y coordinate is negative 4.147. And we're done with that one. Okay. Now it says how far apart are the x-intercepts? So what do we need to do? We need to find each of them. Okay, so to find the x-intercepts, you can only have one of them graphed at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the second one. And then I'll go back to the first one. And how do I find the x-intercept? Second trace number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do my scrolling. You guys typing this on yours? Yes, Ms. Rice?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So left bound, right bound. So this x-intercept is negative 4.5. I didn't even have to round it. That was just the x-intercept. And then I'm going to go ahead and graph the other equation, 3 to the x minus 4. With a minus 5 on the end. And I need this x-intercept as well, so I'm going to do the whole process again. I should still see you typing because you're still finding the other one. And how do you figure out how far apart they are? Whenever, the reason I wrote out all the decimals is because this isn't my final answer, and I shouldn't round until the very end. Yeah. So how do I figure out how far apart they are? You subtract them. You subtract them. So you can subtract it either way. You can do this one minus that one. Or you can do this one minus that one, whatever answer you get, you're going to make it positive because a distance is a positive value, okay? So if we do the negative 4.5 first minus the other one, it's going to give us a negative answer. And then we just know that we should make it positive because distances are positive. Does that make sense? Okay. So the distance between the two is going to be 9.965. So that's a tricky way of them basically making you find both x-intercepts while only giving one answer. All right. Where is f of x positive? I can already see it. What part of the graph am I looking at? Am I looking at the dark line or the light line? The dark line. What did we learn yesterday about logarithmic graphs? What type of asymptote do they have? They have a vertical asymptote. So when I look at this problem, it says, where is f of x positive? The part that I'm looking at is this part right here. Because when they say positive, they mean where are the y-coordinates positive? And the y-coordinates are positive above the x-axis. Okay, so I can see that these are all the parts that are positive. Now, normally when I did this, I would say, okay, that's a left arrow. So I would say, okay, that's negative infinity to negative 4.5. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. However, there's an asymptote, so this doesn't go to negative infinity, it stops, right? We learned that yesterday. So if you look at the equation, where does it stop? Negative 5. So I shouldn't say negative infinity. What should I say instead? Negative 5. Okay, the other one, the next question says, where is g of x less than or equal to 0? So now I'm looking at the lighter line, and what part of it am I looking at? Yeah, the part that is underneath the x-axis, okay? So for the other one, I'm looking right here, this part right here. Okay, so what part is this? We've got a left arrow for real this time. And then what's the right side? Okay, 5.465. Does that get a bracket or a parenthesis based on how the question is phrased? Bracket or parenthesis? Bracket, because why? Because it says equals 0, and that's exactly where it equals 0. It's actually hitting that point, so bracket. Cool. It's one of those days. We'll see. Maybe it'll come back. So for your answer for that, if you can't, you clearly can't see it, but your answer for that should be negative infinity, comma, 5.465 with a bracket. Yeah. And then the last question says, where is g of x bigger than f of x? What do I look for on the graph? I look for the intersection. That's where they're the same. So how do I see where g of x is bigger?
Do you look where the intersection say that to infinity?
Depends on the picture. So g of x is bigger. How do I see that on the graph? How do I know it's bigger? Because remember, when you see f of x or when you see g of x, that's another way of saying y. It's just telling you that it's y of this function versus y of that function. So they're saying, when are the y-coordinates of this one bigger than the y-coordinates of that one? So what should you look for in the picture?
Place where the y-coordinates for g of x is larger.
So in the picture, they would be above. So you're looking where one line is above the other line. And g of x is the light gray instead of the dark one. And so where should we be looking in the picture? where it's above. So it's right, if you can see it, it's right here. Because over here, the light gray is beneath the dark line. You guys see that? It's lower. And then they hit the intersection, and then the light gray is above the dark line. You guys see that? Okay, so we're going to say that it starts at the intersection. What was the x value of the intersection?
This is 5. Yeah.
3.856.
3.856.
Oh, yeah.
So it starts here, and then it goes
To infinity.
to an up arrow that is also a right arrow, so it goes to infinity. So infinity definitely gets a parenthesis. Does this get a bracket, or does it get a parenthesis? It gets a bracket because we want to start where they equal each other. So we're going to equal that point. Okay, so at this point, your assignment from yesterday should be done. So go ahead and nose goes in your groups, take those, get them turned in.